Hello there. First and foremost, I just want to thank everyone that has viewed my previous video on the COVID-19, not COVID-9, COVID-19 virus or coronavirus, whatever you want to call it. It's continuing to get more views and I'm loving it. It was a bit of a tangent from what I been recently doing, movie reviews, but I kind of felt like it was relevant and I just needed to vent a few things, as you may have noticed if you watched the video. This is a major spoiler-free review, so you don't have to worry when you're watching this. You can just sit back and enjoy it. So with all that being said, my name is Jay, and this is my opinion. So last night I watched early access to The Invisible Man, the new Invisible Man movie on Amazon. And it had a bit of a legacy to live up to. There's been previous incarnations of the movie, as well as a very famous book, and with a relatively unknown cast and with a reused premise. It could have very easily have just gone pop on the scrap heap of remakes, remasters, reboots, whatever. I do confess, when I decided to watch this movie, I didn't really know much about it. I'd watched the trailer once, I think a couple of weeks ago, and I wasn't blown away. It seemed, fairly generic. But my curiosity started to peak after the movie was released, and I was hearing good things, and I thought, well, they're saying nice things over there. They're saying good things over there. Why not give it a try? And then when it came onto early access on Amazon, because of, well, we don't need to go over what's happening at the moment, I thought, well, I'll just give it a try and see what happens. And that's what I did. First and foremost, I will say this. This is not a feel-good movie, as you'd expect. It's bleak, it's raw, and it's very gritty. And that bleak tone pretty much covers the entire movie. There's very, very little levity. And it is quite unrelenting. There's not a lot of laughs, so don't go into this movie expecting any laughs. In fact, I don't think I actually laughed once at all during this whole movie, and that's not a bad thing. It's very fitting for this kind of movie. The movie is slow paced. It's very slow paced, which some people could get bored with, and some people could lose interest because some people's attention spans aren't that great. But over this 2-hour movie, you really get to know the protagonist, Cecilia, very, very well. Elizabeth Moss, who actually plays Cecilia, the main character in the movie, she's excellent, just phenomenal at playing the ultimate victim. Boy, does she go through the ringer in this movie. She really does. Even from the beginning, straight from the outset, the mission she goes on just to escape her abusive relationship. And that pretty much sets a precedent for everything that happens with increasing frequency and with increasing intensity. The character goes to a very dark place as she's traumatized and ultimately very unstable due to the said abuse from her relationship. So this character is set from the beginning. We established she's not stable, she's traumatized, and that sets up beautifully what happens, particularly in the first half of the movie. For me, the best part of the movie was probably the first half of the movie, or first part of the movie at least. And it was beautifully crafted to create paranoia in Cecilia, the main character, as well as us, the audience, as these very strange and spooky things begin to occur on screen. Tension building was amazing. There's slow camera movements, and I found myself looking to see if I could see signs of the Invisible Man in the shot, but obviously you don't, because he is the Invisible Man. There were some shots that were completely devoid of people in them. They were just the way it was framed. The camera's telling you, you should be looking here, but there is nobody here. So are you looking at someone who's invisible, or are they not there? I let you decide. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not. But it does create that level of paranoia. Is she being watched by someone? Or is it just in her fractured mind? And the thing I absolutely loved about this movie was, particularly in the first half, there was some really inventive scares, pretty innovative ones. One in particular, which it's not really a spoiler, I'm just going to tell you. There's a particularly tense scene, and it ends up with Cecilia outside the front of a house, all wrapped up in the cold. It's cold, it's cold. And you see her warm breath in the cold air, like the Titanic thing. All CGI'd, obviously. And then just over her shoulder, just over her left shoulder, like where I'm pointing right here, right there. For her not to see, but for us to see, you just see one warm breath in the cold air, just seemingly coming out of nowhere. So that was for us, not for her. Because again, it builds that tension. She's being watched, but she cannot see who's watching her, but she thinks she's being watched. It's a real, pardon the expression, but it's a real mind fuck for her. And when her mind's pretty fucked already, well, that's why she's the ultimate victim. I'm not gonna say too much about the story, because obviously I don't want to ruin it for anyone. But the story is relatively simple and straightforward, even though there are a few twists and turns and a few things that will shock people, and a few things that won't shock people. But it's not overly complicated story, but it is one you kind of have to pay attention to. As I've mentioned already, it is a very tense and very suspenseful movie. There's not a huge amount of action in it, which, in horror movies you don't want to have too much. But when it does happen, when the action does happen, it is very impactful and very, very, very visceral. Because it literally can come out of seemingly nowhere, because you don't see it coming, because he's the invisible man. The first attack on Cecilia in the kitchen being one of my favourites. It's a highlight for me. But yeah, again, you need to watch it for yourself. For me, words can't do it justice. For me personally, this again, my opinion, the movie kind of slowed down once you saw at least a little bit of the villain, the monster, the bad guy, whatever you want to call them. Like in the examples of movies like Alien and Jaws, Ridley Scott and Steven Spielberg were very good at showing very little of their monsters, of their villains in their movies. Yes, this is probably due to the limitations of technology of the time, the outfit for the Alien, the animatronics for the Jaws. They weren't great when you see them in the light of day. They're not all that impressive or all that scary, but it's the way you shoot around them, what you don't see is more scary than what you do see. So it kind of creates that mystery and that tension. I understand you ultimately have to see the monster, you have to see the villain, but I kind of feel that in The Invisible Man, you see a little bit too much too soon. And kind of because of that, some of that tension and some of that suspense, it lets up a little bit, because you see the bad guy. So a lot of that, those scenes where I kind of literally felt myself leaning forwards, I felt my muscles tensing, because you weren't sure what was going to happen. But once you start seeing what's making all these things happen, yes, it's still good. It looks good, don't get me wrong, it looks good. But again, that little bit of mystery kind of dissolves, and you just kind of, the second half of the movie just kind of rolls at a slower pace. Finally, I just want to say there are a few homages to previous incarnations of the Invisible Man, which I really got a kick out of. There was an homage to the cover of H.G. Wells' book, with the top hat and the suit and the kind of the invisible face. Well, is it a face? But it's invisible. There's an homage to that. As well as you see someone covered in bandages, the bandaged head, which is obviously a nod and wink to the 1933 original movie with the same title. I'm not going to tell you where they are in the movie. You'd have to find them for yourself, and there may be more, but I didn't see them, ironically. The only thing I wish they did have, which I didn't, it might be there, but I didn't see it, was an homage to the Hollow Man, which is one of my personal favourite incarnations of the Invisible Man. But yeah, I didn't see anything. If anyone else sees it, just let me know, please, because I really love that movie. So on the whole, I actually really like this movie. I mean, the slow pacing could feel like a bit of a slog and a bit of a grind for some people, but it had good acting, inventive scares, solid action when it happened, and I think that was enough to keep my attention for this movie. It is a bleak and traumatizing story as we follow Cecilia through the course of the movie. But I did find myself really invested in her journey through to the end of the movie, and I found myself really rooting for her. You really want this woman to succeed because of all the stuff that she goes through, and as I said before, she goes through some stuff in this movie. So, well, you know, I would say if you're a horror fan, if you're a fan of these kind of movies, go and watch it, and I would recommend doing it. So, with all that being said, my name was Jay, and that was my opinion. One other thing before you switch off, I hope you haven't already, but I just want to send a shout out to my friend Sean, who actually inspired me to do these videos. He has his own YouTube channel, and I would highly recommend you go and watch his videos. He's got more content than I do, and this is what it's called, just down here where I'm pointing. I didn't want to say it because I didn't want to butcher the name, but go see it. He's got very good production value on his videos. So go do that, and that's a shout out to Sean.